Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a fascinating and frankly, a pretty intense journey ahead of us. Today, we're diving into some truly explosive source material. We're going to start by looking at the severe allegations currently putting our trusted domestic institutions right in the crosshairs. And then, we're going to make a hard pivot. We'll shift gears completely to unpack a high-stakes global military strategy that's unfolding right now in the Middle East. It's a ton of ground to cover, but we're going to break it all down for you step by step. Let's jump in.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with the SPLC indictment allegations, then move into politicians facing scrutiny. After that, we'll pivot globally to U.S. strikes on Iran and wrap things up by looking at the strategy of force.
All right, starting with Part 1. SPLC indictment allegations, the watchdog under scrutiny.
For decades, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been widely considered this untouchable civil rights watchdog, right? Well, according to the reports we're examining today, it isn't just political candidates facing the heat right now, it's the institutions themselves. The SPLC is actually facing a Department of Justice indictment involving 11 counts of wire fraud and money laundering. Critics are arguing that the organization has basically weaponized the term hate group to smear political opponents and supercharge their own fundraising efforts.
And when we talk about fundraising off of societal chaos, the numbers being reported are absolutely wild. Following high-profile national tragedies, the organization's income didn't just grow a little bit, it nearly tripled. We are talking about their income rocketing from $51 million up to $133 million. It definitely raises some serious questions for anyone wondering where those donated dollars actually end up.
So what's at the core of this controversy? Well, a recent committee hearing really zeroed in on how the SPLC categorizes threats. The source material details how they've strategically placed organizations like Moms for Liberty and various conservative Christian groups on their official hate map, literally lumping them in with violent extremists. But meanwhile, critics allege they're completely ignoring radical groups like Antifa or Jane's Revenge, who are out there committing actual arson and burning down churches.
And it actually gets even more shocking. There are reports suggesting the organization was financing KKK rallies just so they could fundraise off the resulting chaos. Commentator Tyrus really hit the nail on the head during the broadcast, arguing that when racism in the country gets this low, groups whose entire business model relies on it have to simply invent it to stay in business.
Moving right along to Section 2, politicians facing scrutiny, domestic fraud allegations.
Now, the spotlight shifts over to Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, where reports are suggesting the walls are really closing in. Investigative segments have been questioning a sudden, totally unexplained $6 million jump in her net worth in a single year, only for it to reportedly drop right back down to zero shortly after. You can imagine, this raises some major concerns about exactly how taxpayer money is being handled.
Why the sudden scrutiny? Well, she is facing some incredibly severe allegations of steering taxpayer money directly into corrupt Somali networks. The claim here is that federal funds, which were absolutely intended for community support, were instead allegedly funneled to cronies in a massive fraudulent scheme.
And we can't talk about Minnesota without looking at the Walz administration, which is facing its own explosive claims. A Democrat whistleblower has actually accused Governor Tim Walz of turning a blind eye to massive state fraud and actively intimidating anyone who tried to speak up. We are talking about billions in fraudulent money that was supposed to go to needy families and hungry children. Instead, the allegations state that money went to terrorists and Somaliland.
Okay, so we are seeing this intense demand for accountability here at home. But what happens when that exact same demand for accountability is applied on the global stage through sheer military might? That transition is perfectly captured by this quote from President Donald Trump during a Situation Room briefing. If we need to negotiate with bombs, we'll negotiate with bombs. Let's transition now to the deployment of forceful global military action.
Which brings us to Section 3, U.S. strikes on Iran, shifting the focus abroad.
We're looking at the global stage now, specifically the Middle East, where wave after wave of U.S. airstrikes have been absolutely pounding Iranian targets night after night. The sheer scale of this military operation is massive. According to reports, 49 Tomahawk missiles, alongside a fleet of fighter jets, were used to hammer radar systems and air defense units just 40 miles outside of Tehran, as well as along the Persian Gulf coast. The administration is basically saying they have completely run out of patience with stalled negotiations and attacks on U.S. forces.
And that leads us right into our final section, Part 4, the strategy of force, forcing capitulation.
So is this the start of World War III, or is it basically a masterclass in high-stakes negotiation aimed at forcing capitulation? Well, the tactical U.S. strategy breaks down into 3 very distinct steps. Step 1. Eliminate the radar and air defenses to peel back Iran's layers of protection. Step 2. A covert operation where the U.S. military secretly escorted 100 million barrels of oil right through the Strait of Hormuz in the dead of night, completely undetected by a blinded Iranian military. And Step 3. Squeeze the regime economically to force a total collapse and capitulation.
Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley makes a really crucial point here. She argues that Iran never had any intention of negotiating in good faith to begin with. They just stall, they rebuild, and crucially, they are heavily backed by global adversaries. As she points out, China and Russia are actively providing drones, manned portable air defense systems, and the satellite imagery being used to target U.S. bases. She warns that this entire global alliance has to be held accountable if we want to truly weaken Iran.
And military experts? They're totally agreeing with this need for overwhelming action. General Charles Wald states it plainly. It's time to end the measured, tit-for-tat responses. The new strategy is to stop the tap-tap-tapping of light retaliations and instead dismantle Iran's military capacity entirely. By taking out the infrastructure that keeps the regime in power, the U.S. is hoping to drive major internal dissent. The idea is that the Iranian people, who are already pretty ticked off by decades of misrule, can finish the job right from the inside.
Now, here is where it gets really interesting economically. The economic reality of this aggressive doctrine has completely defied expectations. Experts had heavily predicted that a direct attack on Iran would tank the stock market and send oil prices soaring to $250 a barrel. But because of the strategic dismantling of Iranian blockades and those covert oil escorts we talked about, the reported reality is the exact opposite. Oil is sitting comfortably around $85 a barrel, and the stock market just hit another record high.
So let's bring this all together. From billions of dollars in alleged domestic fraud involving the SPLC and prominent politicians, all the way to devastating airstrikes designed to break the Iranian regime, will this sudden era of forced accountability actually lead to lasting stability? Whether we are demanding transparency from trusted institutions here at home or forcing capitulation on the global battlefield abroad, the pressure is undoubtedly at a boiling point. Thank you so much for joining me for